Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Alaska Outdoors Podcast. Today we are talking about hunting, all things hunting start to finish with a couple of our team members, Anthony Celia, Cole Leaf. We get a lot of questions online, especially in the Great Alaska Hunting Club group, talking about hunting, where do people get started, and get kind of all kinds of general questions. So we just wanted to hit on that topic today and hopefully answer some of those questions and give some backstory on us, where we started, some of the lessons we learned, and help the new hunter kind of get a foot up on the situation. So Anthony, why don't you get us started? What brought you to Alaska? Where did you start hunting?
Well, military brought me back up here in 2008 from Florida. So I lived in pretty much the city. And my dad never hunted, and I didn't know really many hunters. So I grew up like a half hour away from Daytona. I knew the beach and some fishing, but I always had hunting like in my soul, right? So like I always watch shows and everything like that, bow hunting, and I always just had that fire, that passion in me. And so coming up here, I was like, man, I'm gonna go hunting, right? Like, so got up here, and I quickly found out that I was pretty over my head. Like, it was so overwhelming, like just the amount of like area that you could go, all the units, the regulations from ADF and G. Not having hunted before, it looks like a lot, right? So you're like, oh man, you have to shoot this size bull, and how do you judge that to what gear? And so first time I went hunting was this September before I deployed. So it was the first year I was up here, and we went moose hunting for a weekend trip in Hatcher's Pass. So if you haven't been to Hatcher's Pass, there's a lot of people that go out there for moose. And we had a truck that we took up this little trail and ended up getting it stuck. And I mean, we just really had no idea what we were doing. I mean, the guy I was with is pretty much used to going out in Montana from his truck and hunting that way. So it was a big experience.
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I shot a moose. You shoot it. Everybody prepares all the time for, the gear and all the stuff, getting ready for the hunt, where to go, studying maps, talking to all these buddies or friends, or sometimes just hopping in the truck and going. But it's a big realization the minute you pull the trigger, the moose is down, you walk up to it, and you're just like looking down at it like, oh my gosh, look what we just did. Like, at least for me, the first time I saw it, I was with my brother, we just dumped a moose, and we're looking at it like, okay, I remember, what gear to pack, what everything in my backpack was, but man, what was the first cut we need to make? And, those first couple of animals you dump and you get on the ground, you're really like, you rely a lot on your butcher and your taxidermist. You learn real quick, packing everything out, what you needed to pack. And that's just the way to learn. That's the way to get started. I wish somebody told me to go visit a butcher a few times before and go talk to the taxidermist a few times before. We get those questions all the time, when people start talking about how to cape animals, take care of them. And man, if you just got a couple weeks before your hunt, go talk to the taxidermist, look at work from that taxidermist, find a taxidermist that does quality work near you, and or even far away from you. Just find one, because that mount's going to be the mount of your lifetime if you're going to mount it, and just spend some time with them, talk to them, and it's a wealth of knowledge you'll learn that will save you a lot of heartache down the road.
I was actually pretty lucky that we didn't shoot a moose that trip. I don't know what we would have done, right? It wasn't until like 3 unsuccessful trips out, and it was finally my first animal I killed was a caribou, which I think is like one of the perfect size. I wouldn't go any bigger than like a caribou, starting off at like a blacktail or black bear would be good. It's just not as overwhelming as a moose, but going out and like watching YouTube videos, watching hunting videos, getting an idea of what is to come when you actually have that animal down on the ground, and like, okay, this is the cuts, this is how it should look, and you take this leg and you take it off, you put it into a game bag. Those are all things like now that I kind of take for granted, and I can look back on my first hunt and really that guy who showed me how to do everything, I was really grateful for. And because I wouldn't have known how to do it, so I was just like a packer out there, and I was like, oh man, so okay, really, it's not that complicated. Just take the knife and don't stick the guts, and just take all the meat home and you'll get it off in pieces and it can become burger, but don't feel overwhelmed, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of people I talk to. The first thing we recommend is hunting caribou. Caribou is such a perfect animal to start with, and if like you were with somebody that was pretty experienced, right, that could kind of show you the way, having somebody that's been around Alaska, just go help them out for a season. I don't know anybody personally that I would or have helped out, or I would actually go help out, that I help pack everything out, that's not gonna share meat with you and help you. I don't know. There's kind of unwritten rule for me, anyways, that if you come help me pack out half an animal, half that animal is yours. I'm not going to fly to a Fognac or fly somewhere remote and have you help me pack out 700 pounds of meat and then be like, oh, thanks, buddy. Here's a pack of steaks. What about you, Cole? What's your first experience?
I didn't grow up in a hunting family myself either. My dad wasn't a hunter, but I moved up here in 2009 from Oregon. I remember I went deer hunting a couple times as a kid with my dad and some of his buddies, but again, never grew up hunting. We grew up fishing, but I knew I always wanted to do it. And that was something that I had a passion for growing up. And looking back now, I think moving to Alaska was the best experience, or the best possible opportunity for moving into that kind of a passion, because of the opportunity we have up here to hunt such a massive area. But knowing somebody that enjoys hunting as much as you do is everything up here, because that's how you get into it, just communicating and just experiencing, what they've experienced. And that's, for me, kind of how I started. I found a couple of buddies that I went to high school with that they were avid hunters themselves. And then, again, caribou was my first animal as well.
Oh yeah, caribou is, again, you don't have to worry about such a large animal to deal with. Generally, when you're hunting caribou that time of year, if you're hunting like an early August hunt, you got tons of daylight. For the most part, you got pretty decent access there and back from camp. You can break it into 2 loads and be able to make it back. I have made a few mistakes on some mountain hunts and tried to back out an entire caribou in 1 load before.
Was yours a road hunt from like the tier 1 tags or something?
Yeah, I drew the DC 485 tag for Unit 13, and mine was actually a February hunt. The first time I tried to take a caribou on that tag, I failed, which this brings up another good topic. It was November. We were hunting on the Paxton side of the Denali Highway, and there was people everywhere. Trucks were just, road hunters glassing from the road, trying to find something. And I looked over to my buddy and said, hey, man, it's like, I think I see something out there. It looks like a caribou. It's pretty white, And he's like, oh, no, that ain't a caribou. So I'm like, yeah, it is. I throw my truck and park, pull over and start glassing. And sure enough, it's a bull caribou. Well, we took off racing across the tundra to try and get to this thing before anybody else saw it. And I set up the shooting sticks, and I'm sitting there, and about a little over 100 yards away from this thing. I pop off a shot, and bullet hits the dirt about, 5-10 yards in front of it. I'm thinking, like, what is going on here? Well, come to find out, my scope rings were, they came loose, and the torque didn't hold on the screw, and that caribou skylined himself and took off. But I ended up being successful in February. I shot a nice little bull caribou off of a lake down the highway. So it ended up working out well. Saw about 75, 80 caribou in the small herd, and ended up being successful.
I think that's important too, like with in regards to caribou, like they're herd animals. So it's not just you're going to find one animal in 10 square miles. You're going to find multiple animals. And relatively, it's, for all intents and purposes, it's a road hunt. I mean, you have your tier 1 tags, Tokes, Dees Highway. You can go up the Hall Road, but everything's pretty much right off the road. I mean, you can get serious on caribou and do a fly-in, backpack trip and everything like that. But for the most part, it's a truck hunt, and it's a good way to dip your feet in the water and just kind of have camp right there at your truck. You can move around. And not that you're physically enabled to, or not capable or something like that, but it just gives you a little bit more ability. to run around and see what's out there and get your feet under you.
Yeah, a lot of those hunts, those Denali Highway hunts, are kind of perfect, and a lot of people do use them as kind of their first hunts, or people that aren't even really much of hunters, right?
Mm-hmm.
They DC 484, 85, and those tier tags, they're pretty much guaranteed tags, or pretty easy to draw, probably the easiest draw tag to draw. And then after that, you can hunt pretty clearly from the road and easy access for the most part. But
yeah.
Yeah, that's another reason why that unit's so heavily hunted, so easy, so successful in taking in animals, because of the accessibility that you don't really get a whole lot of other places.
But for your first hunt, or a kid's first hunt, something like that, where the kids can't walk, right, as far, great for younger people, so...
That's a good way to get used to the terrain, too. Everything's super accessible. Not that other places aren't either, but, if you're looking to have a successful hunt and just get an overall good first experience, that's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a good intro into the regulations. A lot of people start asking questions on social media, and social media, everybody knows you ask one question on social media these days, you get 5,000 opinions on it, and some of them are right. Some people provide some quality information. Some people have a little bit of a smart-ass attitude about it. But I always tell everybody, go back to Fish and Game. The easiest place to learn about hunting in Alaska, getting used to the regulations and everything. I mean, stop into the local Fish and Game office. Those guys are more than happy to talk to you. All was happy to talk to you and give you a wealth of knowledge. And their online website is, the library they got on there is insane.
Oh, it's extensive. They give you all the statistics and everything. So.
Oh yeah, not even just stats and learning more about maps there, but you can watch videos on how to clean a burbot, how to set burbot lines, how to field dress a moose. They have a whole video on there of how to field dress a moose, and I don't think they have a caribou one on there. There's actually a really good one on YouTube that I watched from one of the northern schools, where elder from the village kind of shows all the younger kids at the village how to completely break down a caribou start to finish, and he does it in a little bit of a style that I use now, the gutless method. He does that, and he does it quick. Obviously you could see the experience on there, but that kind of led to how I gut and clean everything these days. Everybody kind of differs a little bit on moose and stuff, if they gut it, haul the guts out or anything, and that again differs according to where you're at and your access, your time of day, and all the other factors. But that video alone, to me, doing that little bit of research has changed the way I clean everything these days, and makes me really efficient at breaking down a caribou. I think it takes me 20 minutes or so to get it in the game bags ready to rock.
I think it's interesting too. Like Cole and I, we didn't grow up hunting, and you kind of did. I mean, you grew up down in Saldana, but like in your high school, you guys butchered a moose, right? I think I heard you say.
Yeah. That's SCI program, SCI Alaska program. That's a really, really good program that teaches, some quality stuff.
But you said it was still daunting when you walked up to your first moose and you're like, oh, wait.
Right.
Everything that I learned.
Right. Yeah, it's, easy to, you learn a lot of stuff online and do a lot of research. And that's why it's so important to do it and go back and look over that knowledge. I remember the first time I went goat hunting, and I wanted to mount a goat, and that was one of my biggest things, is not messing up a goat mount, because that's just one thing that had been on top of my list for a long time. So before the hunt, I'd talked to 2 or 3 taxidermists, and I just looked over at a printout with me in the field of like where to make the cuts to shoulder mount it, and how to properly move the head, and I think that's sometimes underlooked by a lot of people until that moment in the field. And, any taxidermist will tell you that in any client, hey, come over, talk to me. They're more than willing to break it down, because it's going to make their job easier in the long run. It's going to make your mount far better. And I mean,
in regards to your mount, if you're wanting a shoulder mount, there's a specific way you should be doing it too. And if you want a rug, it should be kind of opposite. So you're not going to be working up the belly. For a shoulder mount, you're going to usually come up the back and go and do a little Y cut up by the horns. But on a rug, you're going to be coming up from the belly. So there's some different techniques to be doing it. So, and that's doing your due diligence, right? So you did that and you brought it out to the field. And when you're conscious about it and taking notes and bringing them out there with you. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. Will cut your pack weight down. The last couple of years, I've seen a few photos floating around on social media that see this guy packing out. I think that's underappreciated. Packing out doll sheep, right? A Cape doll sheep with the head still inside the cape, and the entire head bringing out. When you're getting ready to mount that, they're gonna remove the jaw. You can remove a lot of meat from the skull. Just removing the skull from the hide, that could save you 5 to 10 pounds right there, which doesn't sound a lot to somebody who's probably just getting into hunting, but when you're climbing 3,000 feet and have to pack that thing out 5 to 10 miles, 5 to 10 pounds is a lot. Just knowing how to properly skin and flesh an animal, that muskox I shot in September, probably removed 40 pounds of flesh off it, fleshing the hide off. I mean, it was so much fat and material that people are like, oh, we're removing the hide. I don't think enough people pay attention to how much weight is actually there when they start packing stuff out. I know a lot of people don't really want to mess out their mount because, it's hard to put fur back in places when you cut it out in the field, bring it out. But knowing how to properly skin and remove it will save you so much weight and so much heartache, and which can lead to losing meat and hurting yourself packing out. So if you shot a sheep 10 miles into the Alaska range and having to haul that thing out, right? And you have 20 extra pounds of garbage that you're not going to keep on it. I mean, it says a lot.
So what do you think is the most important piece of gear at your pack? If you're just starting out and you don't even have a pack yet, what is the most important gear you can think of if you're just starting out getting hunting and everything like that? What do you think is the most vital?
I think, it depends really. Good footwear is important. I kind of have a basics of where I spend most of my money on. And if you look at my gear list, it's pretty obvious. Boots, tent, sleeping bag, backpack. That is where 90% of my money is spent. Because those boots, you're going to live in them, right? You cover a lot of miles. I had a pair of Zamberlins last year that I finally threw away, that I had got, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 miles or 4 or 5 years out of them. And the first year alone, I had over 1,000 miles on those boots. But that being said, if you're road hunting for caribou, right, then those might not be important as just getting, you could buy a pair of Mucks or a pair of Wolverines or cheaper brand boots, right, and just be good out of the gate. So in that sense, I don't know. I still think probably the most vital piece of gear I carry is my Inreach. I'm amazed that I still run into people that have no idea what an Inreach is. And for the people that don't know, an Inreach is a satellite messenger that you can carry. It costs you about $280. You can pick it up at Sportsman's, all over the place. And it comes with a subscription you pay. And it basically allows you to call the National Guard or rescue from anywhere in the world, anywhere that you would want to be, right? And
well, and it sends out an SOS.
Right. Yeah. You can not only text back and forth to people, you can use it as a GPS, and it can save you in a pinch. And it saved, some people that we've already talked to on the podcast here, it saved them, right? Well, one woman, Angel, she was up by Gold Mint Hunt, right? And had to hit the SOS on hers at 1:30 in the morning because she shot herself in the hip. And that was like, if she didn't have that, right, it would have been insane. So it's not necessarily for people that are just going on crazy remote trips. But if you just are out of service on the Seward Highway, right, and you get stuck in a ditch or roll your car or run out of gas, having that Inreach, I carry it all the time. Every time I drive back and forth between Kenai and Anchorage, it's probably, my number one gadget I carry.
What about you, Cole?
I'd probably agree with Caleb. Definitely footwear, making sure that you have a pair of boots that you're going to be comfortable in. Waterproof pair of Zamberlins, Kenetrex, Loas, or whatever kind of boot that you choose that fits your foot the best. I would probably say shelter. Shelter is probably one of the big things that a new hunter would want to pay attention to, just because you never know when you're going to get in that kind of a pinch where you need something to hold up for a day or even just a night, or in a bad storm to wait until you're able to make it out of wherever you're at.
I talked to a guide in Kodiak this year that was for anybody that wasn't hunting Kodiak or around Kodiak. In the fall of 2019, they got one day rained 7 inches in 24 hours, and they had weeks and weeks of just rain and bad weather. A couple of guys I know that flew out onto lakes that were supposed to get picked up by float planes ended up swimming to the float plane to get picked up. And one guide I talked to has a story that kind of stuck with me. Him and the client, what he normally does is ship all of his stuff over prior to guiding the hunt, ships it from his house commercially over to Kodiak, and then the airline they get picked up picks up all his stuff, and then they land, meet at the bush plane service, and then they fly all out. Well, they got out to the field, got dropped off, unpacked their stuff, no tent, and
No.
yeah, so it started pouring rain, and they contacted the air service, said, hey, they don't got their tent. Kodiak air services are some of the best for customer service or anywhere that I've ever experienced. There's not very many of them over there that I would not consider flying with. So this particular one, they bought a brand new tent and we're going to bring it out to them, but they couldn't get back to them for 3 days. So
man.
These guys, luckily, this guy always packs a backup backpack tent, a small 1.5, 2-person. They call them 2-person. Everybody knows the kind of tent we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a survival tent.
It's a survival tent, and that's what ended up happening to these guys. It was 2, 6-foot guys ended up getting in this backpack tent for days when it was just pouring Kodiak rain. Kodiak rain is pretty notorious for soaking everything and blowing sideways. But yeah, if they didn't have the right gear though, and didn't have at least that backpack tent, they would have been in the elements for 3 days before they could get back to them. Who knows how things would have ended up for them. And it continued to rain for days and days and days after that. So definitely pays to have good shelter, and also pays to have a gear list and going over it, double checking it twice before that plane takes off, because
also a backup. Like, he had his backpack tent,
right?
So as kind of his backup, and I know I normally take a lightweight tarp, whether I put my meat on it or something like that, but I can always use it as a shelter. So or just going up into the high country where you may have to spike out in after you killed something and just camp it out for a few hours until daylight. So
a lot of times we've never even planned on spiking out, but the fact that I had that backup tent gave me the ability to spike out when I needed to, and gave me just the edge I needed on some hunts. This last fall, when we were hunting Dall sheep, the particular client I had, he was a little older and couldn't travel as fast as most people, but there he was on his hunt of his lifetime, right? And because we were able to bring that spike tent, we were able to bring that with us and go out and spike the night and get his ram, and then come back the next day, and just lowered the risk quite a bit for everybody involved. We weren't, trekking through the dark miles trying to get back to camp the next day. So, sometimes it'll give you the edge you need to get things done. Sometimes extend your ability for the range you have and what have you. So yeah, besides gear, and then going off, I think for a lot of guys before, gear is kind of where a lot of people seem to start when it talks about hunting. When somebody moves to Alaska, they want to get into moose hunting, right? The first thing they, I think, start looking at rifles, then start looking at gear. But I think we talked briefly about fish and game a little bit, but being able to pick up those regs and starting off with that, and looking at what the seasons are and learning where the game management units are. That one thing that's helped a lot of people is Onyx, picking up the Onyx app. That has kept a lot of people out of trouble, I think, because it's basically a phone app that tells you who the property owners are and where you're at, and you can upload the game management units, so you're hunting in the right area, right? You're not. If you see a legal animal, the last thing that will ruin somebody's first hunt is dropping a animal in an area and then finding out that they're in the wrong unit or in the wrong season for that unit or something. Because I think that's a big fear with a lot of people, is dealing with their first animal is tough to begin with. It's a big learning curve, especially if you haven't grown up in a big lifestyle, but also the amount of trouble you can get in because of so many regulations, right?
Right.
It's a huge mountain for people to climb. I think that's what kind of pushes a lot of people back about getting into it, because nobody wants to get in trouble by just going out attempting to fill their freezer and then stepping on the wrong property or not having the right permits or planning and stuff. So,
well, I think kind of in that aspect is like being specific and having like an idea of what you really want to do, right? What you really want to go after. So whether it's moose or caribou, picking something in like an area. And there's so many resources out there, whether you're talking to Fish and Game, biologists, you're looking at blogs, the Outdoor Forum, Facebook, or just asking those general questions. And a lot of people will help you out. I mean, they're not going to give you their honey hole, right, that they go to time and time year after year, but they're going to give you where all the new people go, and Hatcher's Pass or Tier 1, Toke, and those are those road hunts that a new person is going to be comfortable going out there for. So
yeah, it's okay with not going out getting too crazy right off the bat. If you want to caribou hunt or moose hunt or whatever your plan is, right, to start with, I think you learn more about the animal, and that will kind of lay the path forward for you on where to go and what will help you kind of narrow, build a plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So caribou, for instance, right? Learn about the herds in Alaska, where they are, where they migrate to and from, what they're eating, and what that animal's kind of looking for to survive during that time of the year. And that'll kind of point you in a direction on what's a good hunting area to be, right? A lot of people say, I won't give up my hunting holes. And people, I think overlook the fact of why are those hunting holes, right? Well, this is a good moose area because there's a lot of, right? There's a lot of good willow. There's low predator population, this big country, so I think that'll help a lot. That's helped me. The more research I've done over the years, especially in the last 5-6 years personally, the more time I've spent researching before season has made me far more successful than I was before, rather than, before you moose hunting season, right? You go out to the swamps, tundra, first thing in the morning before daylight and look around, and there's nothing that says you can't be successful doing that. I shot moose and caribou that exact same way, but spending a little bit more time during research prior to the season and doing some scouting ahead of time, throwing out some trail cams, studying those movements of those animals, you might be able to put yourself in an area where you have higher chance of success and less chance of seeing other people too. And that's how everybody gets those hunting holes, right? How are you supposed to find your hunting spot away from other people? That's how they do it every year. They didn't just walk down the road one day and be like, oh yeah, this is my spot.
Yeah, putting in the time. And there's a lot of maps out there, Onyx or just the Gazetteer, different GPS apps that you can get on your phone, and it shows you all these trails, hunting trails, four-wheeler trails, and start picking out those. Just go and walk them down, and take your four-wheeler down them, see how far they go, and see where you can get off your four-wheeler and then hike too, right? So if you can put in more legwork than the next person, the more successful you're going to be. That in the time, right? So like my first moose hunt I think it was like 2 days. It was a weekend, right? Which in Hatcher's Pass is not very much time, right?
Big country.
Yeah, it's big country. There's a lot of pressure out there. So I would rather, if I'm going to do a hunt to be successful, I want as much time as I can dedicate out in the field. And so my equipment follows that, right? So if I can be comfortable, right? My footwear, if my feet don't hurt and I can keep walking, if my shelter's good and I'm not getting soaked to the bone and have a chance of hypothermia or anything like that, if my pack feels comfortable, right? Where I can just continue to have a good mentality to keep pushing out and just keep going farther and keep going farther until I find something that's legal. Right.
That's a good topic. A lot of people, there's a reason. If you look at guided hunts is a kind of a great example. Why would a brown bear hunt or a Dall sheep hunt be 15 days long? There's a reason for that, because you got to cover the country. You got to spend time. I can't tell you how many times we've been at places hunting that we've been there for 4, 5, 6 days, haven't seen anything, and then the next day you shoot an animal right outside the tent.
Well, they say you can only see like so much of the country too. You can only see like 1/5 of it or 2/5 of it.
Right.
something like that, versus all like the dips and the valleys and depressions in there.
I think that's the one thing that I heard when I was at the Wild Sheep Foundation seminar is the biologist that was sitting there talking. He mentioned that a lot of people tend to stop and they'll only glass for a little bit rather than actually taking the time to glass the face of a mountain 2 or 3 times, giving it time to actually wait and watch what's moving. And that's the one thing I think for new hunters to keep in mind. Even when you guys are hunting moose, for that matter, these moose, even though they're a big animal, these things can disappear in an instant. I mean, they'll be there 1 minute and then next minute they'll be gone and you'll never see them again. Either they've bedded down or they've moved into thick brush where it's higher than the actual height of the animal is. So being able to just stop, be patient, and glass and try and cover as much area as much as possible where you're stopped, give it time, because sometimes that can be the difference between success and defeat.
Right. There's a quote I always take with me every year, even though, I've been pretty successful the last few years and kind of like to think I know what I'm doing around certain animals and certain hunts. I always remember this quote by Fred Bear that says, "Go where the animal is, not where you want it to be." Right.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
I have to remind myself of that so much in the field because I'm a, I'm a diehard mountain hunter. I love chasing goats. I love chasing sheep in the high country. I love being up there. But when I'm sitting there guiding spring bear or grizzlies in the country, right, you spend 90% of your time behind a pair of binoculars looking at the same area over and over and over for days and days on end, because eventually that's an area that bears frequent, right? That's where they live. They're gonna go through there, more than likely you're gonna see something in that area. But if you don't spend the time setting their glass in and looking in the areas where those animals are going to be, just because you show up to an area doesn't mean, the trophy doll sheep or moose or legal animal is going to be there just
Mhm.
because you show up. No, you just got to wait for it, right? That's the biggest thing about hunting. I think that's the main thing about hunting is right place, right time.
Creatures of habit.
Right. Yeah. Finding an area they frequent, like Kodiak deer this year was a big one. A lot of areas we were hunting, you couldn't glass a lot. So the biggest thing was, first of all, finding a place you could see, right? There's a lot of alders, a lot of high brush. Finding an area that you could see far enough where you could glass a little bit, get into an area, but also just finding deer trails, right? This one area that we hunted, we did really well, and I think we shot 90% of our deer on that trip in this one field that was a couple hundred yards wide. But there's a deer trail going right through the middle of it, and every day a different hunter from our group sat in that field, and they would see deer all day walking in that one field. It wasn't a big area, and there wasn't a lot of food in that area for deer, but they traveled right through that cut every day. So, we just spent our time hung out in that field, glassed a lot, and sure enough, 90% of our deer came out of that field just spending the time there. So I think it's a big part of it too.
Yeah. And it comes down to a little bit of hunting style. Like I'm a little bit more of an aggressive like hunter, I guess you could say. Like I like to move. I gotta be moving. And so like mountain critters are awesome, right? Like you can go to Kodiak, or if you're hunting goats, like they're easy to see. They're a white dot on the mountain, but they're hard to get to. And so like I really like hunting goats and sheep, but I think I love the actual stalk and the hunt of hunting bears more. And it's just during that moment, right? So on bears, it's like that, all that patience and waiting and sitting behind the glass. Oh, it tears me up. I'm just like, if I could just get over that like ridge. I should probably stay here, but I want to get over that ridge and see what's over there. And like I'm notorious. Same thing with Caleb, is like, what's around that corner? Right? You always just want to keep pushing and see how far you can go. But yeah, definitely on bear hunts is, that patience is key. I think on a lot of hunts, but when it comes to goats, they're there, you know what mountains are going to be on. They're not coming down into the valleys more or less, but they're going to be up on top, and you're going to find them pretty easy and be safe getting to them. So you can get yourself in a pretty dangerous predicament.
Yeah, it's goat and sheep hunting. That's one thing. I think that's the easiest part of the hunt is finding them. but the hardest part of the hunt is getting to them. Whereas, grizzly hunting, right? There's a guy that I work for on Kodiak that we make a bet every year who could spot the most bears. And let me tell you, this guy has got decades of experience on me. But he will find bears in places and miles away where he will point me right to where that bear is. And I'm like, there's no way there's a bear there, but he's been doing it for so long, and his eyes are just keen on what it is, and he's just dialed into this area where, sure enough, we could be watching that spot, and I could be convinced for an hour that there's not a bear there, and all of a sudden that bear will stand up and walk out of those bushes, and I'm just like, how did you see that? And that's just having quality glass, and just waiting and knowing and spending time behind that glass and knowing. I mean, if that bear picks his head up for 5 minutes of the day and you're not looking for those 5 minutes, you're never going to know that animal's there. Mm-hmm. A lot of these animals in Alaska, pretty much everything, right, will get up in the morning, feed when it's nice and cool out in the morning time, heat of the day, lay down, and then come back up when it's cooled down before dark. Basically everything will. Mm-hmm. There's a few instances where you can run into animals midday in the middle of the afternoon. But for the most part, right, they've been walking around feeding all day or early morning or all night. And then by that time, they're ready to lay down. So it varies a little bit according to the animal. But if you're not spending your time behind the glass and waiting, like we were talking about Dall sheep, right, people glassing mountains, right, if you're not looking during those periods of the day or spending the time behind the glass, then you're going to miss that animal every time.
It's almost like the same thing. If you don't have your line in the water when you're trying to catch a fish, you're not going to catch one. Right. It's the same thing as keeping your eyes on the mountain, because you're never going to see an animal if your eyes aren't behind the glass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the tools, I know some people are still not carrying GPSs, Inreach. I don't even carry a GPS anymore, but I do carry my Inreach. But if I don't have my Inreach or my phones, I still carry a lot of maps and waterproof maps. mytopo.com is one that I frequent quite a bit to be able to print off maps of the area I plan to hunt, and they make some nice pocket-sized waterproof maps that you can fold up and keep with you.
Yeah, I do the same thing too.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the haul road hunt that I went on, and first hunt out on my own. Me and my brother and the fog set in up there, and we just walked in circles for like 3 hours after we shot a couple caribou up there because it's flat, not a lot of landmarks, and that we learned so many lessons on that hunt. But the biggest thing right after I left there was I got an Inreach, I got a GPS, I started carrying maps everywhere I went because, oh man, if you never walked around on the tundra for miles at a time, yeah, it'll give you a whole new appreciation for caribou and hunting in Alaska. There's a reason they call that the Death March, because
caribou are fast.
Oh man, and trying to hunt them in the tundra, we had bows and rifles on that hunt. We ended up shooting one with my bow and then some with the rifles, but every time you're crawling on your hands and knees because there's no cover, mm-hmm. And you're crawling hundreds of yards, and this animal is just casually walking around eating, and he's just like gaining, and he's going and going, and you're just like, what the heck? You just keep crawling
on the move,
trying to get closer. They're barely even moving, and they're covering ground, and here you are, hiding behind a little tussock covered in mud, army crawling, trying to get close to them. It can be aggravating.
On the topic of maps, I was going to say, if you do have a Garmin Inreach, check out the Earthmate app for your iPhone, or I believe they have it for Samsung as well. But you can Bluetooth your phone to your Garmin and end up using that as a map as well. You have a little bit more of accessibility to different styles of maps, topos, or aerial view in certain areas as well. Doesn't matter where you're at, as long as you have good connection with your Garmin. It's an item of a tool of use if you're trying to figure out a specific area that you're in.
Yeah, I bounce back and forth between the Earthmate and then Onyx. I like Onyx because you can do that line distance and everything like that, and kind of judge a little bit of how far you're thinking about going.
Right.
One thing that's main concern we get all the time on the hunting club page, and I probably shouldn't even be bringing it up here, but rifle caliber. Choosing, a lot of guys get really stuck up on what to hunt with, and I think people probably do more research on that 90% of the time than anything. We saw a guy I helped out a couple years ago on the side of the road with him and his son. We were hunting the same area, and they shot a moose that morning. And I pulled over to help them. They dumped a little spike bull moose right on the side of the road, basically right in the ditch. And I stopped because I'd been hunting the area quite a bit, and I kind of just wanted to look at what they shot. But also, when I pulled up, chatted with them for a minute and realized they had nothing to clean the animal. They were not really prepared for anything. But he was just saying, that was him and his son's first moose hunting trip. And I was more than happy to help him out. I had all kinds of rope and everything in the truck. But talking to them, they said, yeah, we really didn't expect to see anything this morning, but we just decided to go out anyways. So they had no knives to cut up anything. They weren't really prepared, but he was telling me they did just buy this rifle recently for his son and had sighted it in and practiced and blah, 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 get ready to moose hunt, to get ready for his first moose hunt. And that just kind of stuck with me, that I kind of marveled at the situation a little bit, that, you go out moose hunting. Obviously, sometimes you're going to run into illegal moose, being prepared for that situation. But they spend a lot of time focusing on shooting the animal, but not so much on all the other supplies that are needed in that situation. I think that happens more than a lot of people would think. I've seen some clients we've had for bear hunts that bought a brand new 338 Lapua right before the hunt. Literally still had stickers on it and everything.
Never sighted it in.
And they could have spent more time with the rifle, being familiar with your rifle. I think that goes a lot further than what caliber you choose. Obviously, there's a minimum of what you want for shooting everything in Alaska for different animals. I've heard in the past, you kind of, depending on what your range, that you want at least 800 to 1,000 foot-pounds of energy at your point of impact. So, if you're shooting out to 300 or 400, you want at least that much, depending on what critter you're shooting. But yeah, like some of these people, buy this brand new rifle, go out and shoot, and they focus so much on the caliber debate, they didn't spend near enough time at the range than they should have. I think
and ballistics are important too. Like when you're sighting in, definitely. So like if you're sighting in with 200 grains of whatever, you need to be shooting 200 grains. So you need to shoot the same bullet that you're sighting in with. So I've seen that a couple times where somebody's been shooting a different grain. Not that I guide, but just friends, that I've talked to and stuff. But they've shot a different grain hunting than they did sighting in.
Oh, yeah. That's sighting in your rifle and becoming familiar with what you're shooting. I think you kind of can get a base on what you want to hunt with, right? If you're shooting moose, some critters like bison, right? There's legal requirements on what minimum you shot. But let's just say 30-06, for example, right? 30-06 is a pretty basic all-around Alaska. It's more than capable of shooting everything in Alaska, right? But when they go out and practice with it, finding a well-constructed bullet that's meant for what they're hunting, I think, is a pretty big topic that I think gets skipped over a lot by people that are fresh into the hunting world. You want to find ammo that's not only accurate for your rifle, but also it's going to hold together for what you're shooting, right? If you're shooting a large bear, right, your plan is to go bear hunting, you're definitely going to choose a different type of bullet than you might be shooting coyotes with, right?
So what would you suggest? Because when you start talking about bullets and it starts getting kind of overwhelming, especially when you're new. You're like, what's BC? What's ballistic coefficients, and how many grains do I need in this bullet for a 375 Ruger or 300 Wood mag, and bonded or partitions. What are you looking at? You know what I mean? So it's tough a little bit when you're first getting in to know those, but I think people are doing some of that stuff when they go out on social media, right? They're asking those questions. And for everybody else, a little bit, it's like, it's like, here we go again. But I think it's important. And I think it's good that they're asking those. And I try to chime in and I try to tell them what I use for the type of animal that they're hunting. So I think it's important that like we as, hunters are supportive in that and don't try to criticize them, as they're trying to ask questions and learn. But there is a lot when it comes to bullets.
Oh, there's bullets is
or arrows,
all over
right?
the place, right? Yeah. I mean, I shoot archery and I've shot archery for a lot of years, and every time I, start looking at changing my setup, I go to full curl and it's like, Dave starts talking about stuff and I'm like, I have no idea. I know how, I get comfortable with my bow, and my setup and start shooting it. I know how to shoot stuff. But when you start talking about arrow straightness and grains and all kinds of other stuff, I just start, I'm like, what? So I can see in that aspect that the whole rifle caliber debate and the bullet construction. But I think, if somebody finds a quality premium bullet to shoot with in a decent caliber, and by decent in Alaska standards, we're talking about 308 and up, basically. If you're going to big game hunt in Alaska, right? You want to look at, if it's a smaller person and they're worried about recoil, 270, 7mm Mod 8, even for black bear, Caribou 243 is a great round for that. But again, that might not be the rifle you're going to shoot a moose with or shoot a larger game with. But 30-06 is a pretty good safe bet. And then when you start looking at ammo, when I first started, what I did, I went and bought 4 or 5 boxes of ammo, right? I got to sight in the rifle anyways. Find a scope, get my rings, get them mounted by the gun shop to start with, right? So I can make sure everything's tight where it needs to be. And then I went out and shot 4 or 5 different boxes of ammo, found one that's accurate in my rifle, and I actually still shoot that same one through my 270 today. That's a Berger VLT hunting bullet. That's what I shoot with that one. But basically, if you're hunting with a premium bullet like a Nosler Partition and a factory ammo, or any of the Barnes or Nosler bullets, you're going to be all right as long as your caliber is all right. You'll learn what you're comfortable with and what your rifle likes as you go. Like, I'm getting ready to get away from the Berger just because on a couple of deer I shot in November, I didn't like the amount of meat damage that it left. And so I'm going to move away from that. But that's going to be something I learned from experience, right? Hunting out of the gate, I was perfectly happy with it. You make a perfect double lung shot, that bullet will do great. I've killed a lot of animals with that, right? But if you're switching back, like we talked about earlier, switching back and forth from what you're training with, because you bought a box of ammo at the store because it was $20. Now you started hunting and you're like, oh, I should buy this bullet because it's $40 and it's steel cased, and you got to be able to shoot and practice with and hunt with the same bullet, because you want your point of aim to stay the same. If you're switching grains between bullets or switching bullet types from at the shooting range and at the field, your bullet's not going to hit in the same spot, and you could lose an animal or wound an animal. That's a huge topic that people should.
So there's a couple things that I do, and so I usually always sight in at 200 yards, just pretty much general on all my rifles. The other thing I do too is there's like a ballistics app that you can get. You put in your ballistics for that round coming out of your rifle, and you can get a chrono. You can run them at the range, and so you'll shoot a couple rounds and get the average of velocity of what it's going through that. And so you'll put it in your calculator, and it may not be 100% perfect, but it's going to give you a pretty good general idea of how much your bullet's dropping at 300 yards. From 2 to 300, from 300 to 400, there's quite a bit of drop in some of these rifles, especially the heavier grains you go, and the shorter round you go. If you're getting into a short action, rifle and a heavier grain bullet, you're going to start dropping pretty quick. So depending on if it's a Magnum or not. But do you guys usually do like a little printout chart or anything like that on your buttstocks, or do you just know for like your yardage?
Yeah, I pretty much sight in at 200 yards myself as well. I'm shooting a 300 Win Mag. It's a Remington 700 platform rifle with a Vortex Diamondback HP scope and tally rings and base, one-piece rings and bases. So far, that's worked really well for me, and it's got the bullet drop hashes in the scope, and then basically I try and I go back to the keep it simple, stupid kind of thing, especially up here in Alaska. Usually there's different distances where you're able to, just guesstimate with your hash marks on your scope, 200 for a 0, and then, try and keep it in mind from there on the hashes.
I shoot a 270. I decided an inch and a half high at 100, which puts me dead on at 200, and then gives me a little bit low at 300. I personally never shoot over 300 yards in the field. Everybody has a different opinion on what's an acceptable range to shoot in the field. I just haven't. I think there's only one instance where I have taken a bear a little bit further, but I practiced out to 500 at the range. And in that instance, I was in a very solid shooting position and everything. It just felt perfect, right? But I also have Vortex that's got the BDC reticle on it. And Vortex's website, actually, you can go on to and they'll give you a printout sticker. You can put in your bullet that you're shooting and the caliber and everything, and it'll give you a little printout of what your BDC should drop at, right? And you obviously should go to the range and verify that, but because mine's the middle is 200, I can go to the first one with those Bergers is 298, and then the next hash mark is 427. So they're a little off, but if I sight in all my rifles the same way, right? 200, and then that animal, you'll never have to worry about guesstimating or dialing your scope or looking at the hash marks from 300 to 100, because even on a small animal like a black bear, right? The kill zone is, if you aim low or aim high, or if you just aim in the middle of that kill zone, your bullet might be an inch high or an inch low, or 2 inches high or 2 inches low. You're still going to be in that kill zone every single time with ranging your rifle like that. So next thing I advise a lot of people is how to take care of your meat, because wet conditions in the fall, especially up here in Alaska, depending if it's warmer temperatures or whatever, meat can spoil really fast. In August, last August we were sheep hunting, it was 90 degrees. And it was pretty terrible. My ears were blistering all over the places. That's one of those hunts where you really got to watch your meat care and your hide care. You talk to taxidermists and skull guys, man, they will tell you some stories about things they've seen. People come off a hunt, throw that cape in the back of their truck or those horns and drive around for a week showing all their buddies their great kill they have, and then by the time they bring it to that, the taxidermist, they will just wipe the hair off slipping. It, or it's rotten. You guys want a great tip for your taxidermist. If you can, get that skull to him right away, but also if it's going to be a while, throw some ice in there. If it doesn't smell like rotten and covered in maggots, he will love you for it every time.
So we're all out there. We should be out there for harvesting meat and everything like that. So we want to have that good meat care, and we're going to be eating it. So we want a good product when we put it in our bodies and we're eating it. So when I am field dressing, I'm trying to, definitely not get the guts on there and try to keep it as clean as possible, which is sometimes a little hard when you're field dressing, right? You get a little bit of hair on there and everything like that, but you try to get that stuff off as quick as possible, get it into game bags. I spray it with citric acid. And so I always, when I go out, I take a contractor's trash bag, right? So I can line my pack with it so no blood gets in there, but I don't want to leave it in there, right? Because then it's going to keep that heat in there. I want to take it out and air it. But I can always do like an emergency submersion of that meat if it's going to get hot and I'm going to be out there. If I have like a 2 or 3 day hike back to the truck or something like that, I can take my meat, put it in that bag and just submerge it for a couple hours and get that internal temperature of the meat drop down as much as possible before I can start hiking again, especially if I need a break. Just take it out, put it in that contract bag, submerge it if you have some water, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing about meat and hides, right? Dry, cool, and get it out of the heat. The biggest thing, right, is the animal is going to have an internal temperature already on its own. And if it takes you a while to recover that animal, that's going to take an effect on your meat. I think a lot of people, everybody that's hunted for a while has heard, oh, I don't eat moose because it's gamey. Oh, I don't eat, elk because it's gamey. I don't eat wild game because it's gamey. And a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this fact, but gaminess, I think, is totally comes from either the season you shot the animal, how the animal was killed, instant death, or what it was doing when it's killed. Did it run, dump a little adrenaline, or the meat care following after the animal was shot? Some people will say some things just have gamey flavor, but I think 90% of it is meat care and how it was shot. If you make a perfect shot on an animal and dump it right over, it doesn't have the chance to fill that meat full of adrenaline. It's not going to be tough because it wasn't running all over the place. Depending on the animal, you know, an older moose is good. Its meat texture is going to be a little different than a smaller bull moose. But after that, if you got a nice tarp with you or a contractor bag, you can take the meat off, put it onto those bags, make sure it's not covered in any dirt. Then after that, you know, it's wet at that point. Your goal is to get that meat dry as fast as possible and keep it cool. And when we're saying cool, we're looking for below 50 degrees, optimally somewhere around closer to 40 degrees if you're going to be in the temperature. What's going to happen is that meat's going to turn into like same thing that happened to you. It's going to form a scab on the outside, and that's the best thing that could happen, right? You get that scab on there after the internal meat is temperatures, and that scab will protect the meat on the inside. And when you go to clean it, you'll go and cut that scab off anyways. But if you keep it dry and cool, and get all the meat off the bones, and make sure it doesn't get wet repeatedly. If you're in an area with it's raining quite a bit, hanging it and getting it covered is so important. Kodiak is a prime example of this, hunting during deer season, and it just raining and raining. I see a lot of people hanging stuff, but no tarps over the top of it. That, or the sun comes out and it gets 70 degrees outside and they leave the tarp over the top of the meat. So that can be a big factor on how that meat's going to taste, your final product of that.
Yeah, I'll still leave, and I'm sure you do too, but I'll still leave a tarp over it, protecting it from the sun, but I'll have it opened up so there's maximum airflow.
Yeah, airflow is a big one.
Yeah, that'll get it cooled down as well. So, and then when you're, during your downtime, if you're at camp or, if you're still going out there for more deer or something like that, in between those times, checking on your meat, smelling it, turning it over, stuff like that, and getting some of that airflow to the other side. So
yeah, rotating into the game bags. I've seen a lot of people tie their game bags really tight to the meat, but those game bags are pretty long and they're that way for a reason, right? So if you tie a knot just at the top of the game bag, every couple of days, if you're out there, you can take that meat and wrestle it around, move it around in the game bag, so that way all portions of the meat can get that airflow on it. And because if there's blood in there, right, blood's going to be where your bacteria is going to start, and your meat's going to start to decay and go bad. And so if there's a bloodshot portion, you want to cut all that bloodshot off as quick as possible. But if that blood's setting inside your meat and not getting airflow, your meat still can go bad from the inside out because it's just setting in that bloodshot meat the entire time. That's why it's so important to get all that bloodshot off and then get that airflow on there, because basically what you're trying to do is how we cook a lot of our meat, right? We smoke it, we dry it, right? And the reason for that, right, is it's curing it and delaying that decay process. That's what you're trying to prevent, is that meat from decaying, because the moment it starts decaying, you can get sick or get all kinds of other problems with your meat, and you start getting a lot bad flavors on there too.
Cool. Do you butcher your own meat when you get home and everything like that, or do you bring it to a processor?
The first caribou I shot, I took part of it to a processor. Some of it I cut up into little steaks and stuff like that. Kept the back straps and the tenderloins and that kind of thing. But the caribou I did, black-tailed deer, stuff like that, I did turn into hamburger. Personally, I think that's definitely the best option. It's also the cheaper route as well. If you want to do a home processing on that kind of thing.
They can get pricey. I know. I took my first caribou and I didn't really know what I was doing as far as coming home and processing it. I quickly learned after a $600 bill. I ended up getting like sausages, summer sausages, pepper sticks, all this stuff.
Cheddar dogs.
Oh yeah. It gets pricey though, and so that's something to consider too. After that, I was like, well, this is going to be an investment. Next year, I'm gonna buy myself a meat grinder, and I'm gonna start doing everything myself, starting with a meat grinder. So I'm gonna do roasts, steaks, stew meat and burger. And that's still what I do. And then through my off season, I'll take some of that meat, whatever I have, or if I want to take burger and do like summer sausage, which we got here, right? Some goat summer sausage. I like to try different things though, and most of it's come out really good. So just getting it home and processing it yourself, but understanding that you're either going to have a pretty significant cost. You can, especially if you're doing a lot of the processed meats and doing the dogs or the cheddar cheese, jalapeno, whatever, to burger. You're gonna have a cost there, or you're gonna have a cost, coming home and buying a meat grinder, or like a day, 2 days, 3 days, sometimes depending on what you're doing on processing some of these animals.
Right. Yeah. Again, Caleb's point, get out and talk to different butchers, talk to different, taxidermist methods that they use, or just, talk to other people that hunt, kind of get your own opinion of exactly how you like your meat prepared, or how you want to prepare it yourself, if that's something that you choose to do it, at home. Just really get an idea of how other people take care of their meat, or, if you have tasted gamey meat, again, on Caleb's point, meat, taking care of the meat properly and making sure that you do your best to be on the same point an ethical hunter, just do your best to respect that animal, especially since you're going to be eating it, and just do all the research that you can.
A lot of people, when they start getting out, will probably have a tendency to use processors if they're going to use them. There's a couple that I know Indian Valley is pretty recommended by a lot of people. Echo Lake down on the Kenai Peninsula is recommended by a lot of people. But if they're going in to use starting and just want to go with do it themselves and learn the process themselves, I think there's a couple tools. We talked about the meat grinder. That's kind of one of the more basic things. Back to what do you do after the animal's down? That was the big whole thing. The hunt's over, you're back at home. Okay, now you got to deal with that meat, right? Some people, to start, it's pretty easy to go to the processor and just drop it off. But like you learned, right? They're going to learn, whoa, that can get expensive quick. So we'll save a lot of people in the long run is learning how to butcher themselves, like you did, right? And you don't have to go crazy balls to the wall to start with. You can go get a meat grinder. You can get, I know Black & Decker made a pretty good one as an attachment to a KitchenAid, has a good one. Cabela's grinders are notoriously well.
You can rent them too down at Alaska Butcher Equipment and Supply.
Oh yeah, see, there you go.
I think you can do that.
So there's cheaper options for people that they don't have to necessarily look at spending another couple grand to get started in meat cutting, right? You don't necessarily need a vacuum sealer. A lot of people go out buy brand new vacuum sealers, and we've learned over the years, like Game Savers started having a lot of issues after a while. If you're going to want to process your meat long term, a great option to start with I went back to is freezer paper and saran wrap. I mean, it's cheap, and I've never had to lose a seal on saran wrap and freezer paper. It'll last forever. The last processor I had to do our meat here in Anchorage, I had to go back to work, didn't have time to process it. Right? Had him do it, got it back, all freezer paper and saran wrap. So that's a cheap option as long as you're taking all the air out. And for the most part, people doing it themselves, like you started out, right? You're going to look at cutting steaks. What do you need to do that? And you need a knife, or if you want to get fancy with it, you can use a slicer. I like using my slicer, makes a little bit cleaner cuts. Or you're going to make burger, all you're going to need is a grinder, right? And then everything else after that is knife work. And then going forward years and years, you'll have the base knowledge and be able to take care of your own meat, save a small family a lot of money in the long run. And a lot of people don't realize that when I started, if you're going to use a processor, it will save you a ton of money to take the meat off the bones and take the outer scab off if you have it on there, take all the fatty tissue you don't plan on keeping off there, because you're paying by the pound to get that process too. So if you leave all the bones off a moose on there, you're going to pay some money for stuff you're throwing away.
Yeah, they won't take it either if it's really messy or dirty or anything like that. Most of the time they won't do that. So that meat care is really important. So again,
another thing to keep in mind when taking stuff to a processor, a lot of places have minimums. So a minimum weight for the amount of meat if you want to get your own meat in return when it's processed, getting turned into, a summer sausage or burger or whatever it is. If you want to get your own meat back from the animal that you harvested, you need to keep in mind that there are minimums, or else it's going to be mixed into a big batch.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing. I'm very particular on my meat. When I can't do it myself, there's only a couple people I do go to get it back. There's one, actually, some of those deer that we got back. Kendra was just talking about when we opened up our deer steaks, there was still some grass and, shrubbery that, when you shoot a deer, you're going to shoot it in the grass or whatever, right? It doesn't matter where you shoot that animal, you're probably going to get some type of something in it, right? And you try to clean it off, and you can clean it again and again and again throughout your process. And I do that quite a bit. My hamburger, I'll drain my hamburger a couple different times before I make it into a final process, and I'll clean it. A hamburger, what I like to do is whatever I turn into hamburger, I'll cut into 1-inch cubes, and then I'll put in big metal bowls and freeze it slightly, not till where it's frozen solid, but it's kind of hard to kind of move it around in these 1-inch chunks, and then it'll make it, grinding it will go super fast that way.
Yeah, because if you, the throat of that grinder, if it starts getting hot too, with warm meat and just the friction of your auger and everything, the blade, it'll start cooking that meat a little bit. So having it cold, it'll actually almost, ice that neck over and just give you that good cool product. And it makes, like you said, grinding a lot easier, and it comes out kind of in that icically meat, so to speak.
And it's great too. That's just another step in the process that I take to clean my meat as I'm cutting it into these chunks, right? The more I'm handling that meat, and the more I'm paying attention to it, and the more care I put in that meat, it's a better product every time. Hopefully we'll see that today when we have dinner with some deer meat. But
oh yeah, you're gonna be judged on it. Kendra will.
So I think we gave everybody a pretty good base to start with for some people that had some opening questions, and some newer folks starting to finish. I'm sure there's always stuff we forget to cover, and hopefully people can take and learn from this a little bit. But if you guys had one piece of advice, I ask some more experienced hunters this a lot, but if there was one thing you could tell a new hunter or somebody that wants to get into hunting in Alaska, what would it be? Kind of put you on the spot there.
This kind of puts, there's a lot to think about when it goes into this kind of an interest and a passion. If if it's something you want to put a lot of time and effort into, I think, one thing that a lot of people will always say to me when I'm trying to take on something that I have an interest or a passion for is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So same thing with hunting, break it down. Step one, what are you hunting for? Step two, put it into steps and narrow it down. And that's, the more time and the more, thought that you put into, this kind of a thing, the better off you're going to be. So use your resources.
I like that. Yeah, that's really good. For me, I think it comes down to mentality. I just have the mentality of like, I'm going in there and I'm not coming out without it. Right?
Yeah, just that gung-ho, like,
yeah, I'm going to do it. So whatever it takes. If I have to go in 5 miles, awesome. That was a quick hunt, right? If I have to go in 10, 15, 20, 25, so be it. I'm going to run across something that's legal. And so just having the mentality of going until you come out with something, or until time doesn't allow you to, but making sure you have enough time to do it. So I give myself on a sheep hunt at least 10 days, and I'm going in there and I'm coming out with a sheep.
Yeah, that's a great point that we talk about often, is the mental attitude. A lot of people go 2 or 3 days and not see something, and then I see it on clients quite often that by 4 or 5, you don't start seeing a legal ram by 7 or 8 days, and if we haven't seen a lot of legal sheep or seen legal animal, you see those mood swings quite a bit. But I tell them, every year, any given moment, things can change, and everybody's got a story where they're sitting around a campfire or walking along, and they just turn around and look, and there just happens to be exactly what they're looking for. And 90% of the time, that's exactly how it happens. Yeah. You're not just like, oh, there's going to be a 40-inch ram around this corner, and you walk around in the corner and there's a 40-inch ram. 90% of the time, you got to have that attitude of any given moment, it'll change. So
It's the experience, that adventure that I thrive on. It's not just that one moment where I pull the trigger. It's that whole process of getting to the animal and like, you know, I love shooting older, mature animals because it's like, man, I get to look back and where was I when that animal was born, right? How many offspring has it born or whatever, right? Bared, I guess is the word. But you know, how many fights has it been in, and just that whole process of looking at an animal and kind of studying it, so to speak, for a while and let it sink in where you're at, what you're doing, and how great it is to be out there. And hopefully you're the only one out there. It makes that much better.
Yeah, that is kind of my that's usually my kind of go-to advice. Kind of building off yours is taking your time, not making snapshots, and setting up the shot. Setting up the shot is, if you can do it, that is, to me, I mean, it's so vital. I remember the first time I shot a Dall sheep, I sat there for 4 hours. I had spooked a really nice ram on opening day right outside the tent, and a couple days later, I was solo a few miles away from camp and just came down on top of this ram, which is a pretty rare situation, but I just belly crawled myself down to about 180 yards within this ram. It took me 4 hours, and then after I got there, I was there for about 2 hours looking through this ram. My first ever time I'd seen a Dall sheep in my scope before. And if anybody who's looked at Dall sheep regulations know, they're probably the hardest animal to judge in Alaska for legality. And in my head, am I going, is he legal, or do I want him to be legal? Because this hunt, you know, by that time I was 3 or 4 hunts in trying to kill an animal. I'm, 10 miles back in the country. I got blisters on both my feet. Here I am on this mountain by myself, soaking wet, hugging the rocks, and there he is, 180 yards in my scope, and I'm going, is he or is he not? Do I want him to be, or is he actually legal? And I think, me, anytime you look the scope at anything and there's any question in your mind whether he's legal, walk away, because that in the end will save you. If you're always on the right side of the law, you never have to worry about it, right? You always do the right thing. You never have to worry about if you're getting in trouble. If you make sure 110%, take that extra 5-10 minutes, slow your breathing down, calm yourself down, make sure that your shot, you can't take back that bullet once it leaves the barrel, right? Take your time, make sure that bullet is placed right where you need it to be, make sure that animal is 100% legal, and you'll never have to worry about after the minute you pull the trigger if it's legal or not, because So that's my big thing, is just take your time. You put in all the work, you've invested thousands of dollars, you probably spent some time in the gym maybe, or, you've come this far all the way up to that moment. Don't rush, don't rush it, because that's going to be the biggest deciding factor. As soon as you pull that trigger, right, it's either you're going to miss that animal, you might go home empty-handed, or you're going to be successful, and all your preparedness or preparation is going to pay off in that moment, right? So don't rush it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, me too.
We'll start wrapping this thing up. Thanks, guys, for joining us. I think it was an awesome conversation. Just glad to have you guys here. We'll cut this one short for anybody listening. Thanks for joining us. Another episode of Alaska Outdoors Podcast, and hopefully we'll see you soon on the next one.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my